Hi, welcome to a Further Inquiry podcast. I'm Matthew Genorio, Editor-in-Chief of Further Inquiry. Further Inquiry is a place for playing gracefully with ideas. We are a reader-supported publication for free inquiry, brazen critique, and dissenting ideas.
Hi, and I'm Khadija Khan, a journalist and editor at A Further Inquiry. Matthew and I jointly host this podcast monthly. You can support our work by becoming a paid subscriber to A Further Inquiry today.
Well, hello everyone. Today, this is the inaugural podcast, as it were, of Further Inquiry. I'm joined with my co-host, Khadija Khan. Khadija, how are you today?
I'm fine. I'm very glad to be here on the podcast. This is my first time co-hosting with you. So I'm very excited and looking forward to the discussion.
Fantastic. And as our first inaugural guest, we are joined with Deborah Ricci, a Jewish Canadian based in Quebec. Deborah, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm also very excited for today's discussion.
I think we should just start going right into it. Talk about something we've talked about, which is important the world over right now, is so much misconception, the term being, bastardized is appropriate to use, is liberal. What is liberal? What does it mean to invoke liberalism? What does it mean to be a liberal, for that matter? And
for me, liberalism is basically you get all of the freedoms in the world so long as they don't impede on others' freedom. To me, that's the basic SparkNotes version. But yeah, I agree that it's been entirely bastardized recently.
Yeah, you've had people who brand themselves or designate themselves as leaning in a particular political way and upholding, in quotations there, liberalism, when arguably they disregard the very founding principles of liberalism. I would argue in favor of whatever is politically trendy. And then you have, I guess would be a good point to make, the feature, which is definitely not an element of liberal or liberalism, is the woke element.
Mm-hmm. I think woke to me is synonymous with lack of critical thinking. It's become this very, very closed ideology where you're not allowed to question, which goes against this whole idea of liberalism and what the left, in my view, used to be. I don't know if you... What do you think about that?
I concur, though. There is, too much conflation, I think, with left and liberal. There are two different things. They are very much two different things. There is no liberal-ish or a modern liberal. A liberal, these are universal values. And I think it's people who are most disenfranchised are people who actually uphold liberalism today, as opposed to upholding what is politically trendy in politics or policies, whether that be in North America or if that's in Europe. And I think that's a huge detriment, progressively detrimental from where we are now, if we don't actually reconsider positions, policies, and the principles that made the very notion of the West, not in a geographical sense, but in a conceptual idea. The very purpose of that, comes from shared values, individual rights and freedoms. And we've drifted so quickly and so far away from that. I know that Khadija, I know we've talked about this before, and in the UK, how it manifests so differently.
Liberalism, there is a very simple definition when we talk about liberalism. It's just like acceptance of different opposing views to your own, and have freedom, respect for others, freedom, and there is concept of inclusion, equality. So these are very simple terms, and I think liberalism should be understood, in a very, very simple terms. But of course, this term has been co-opted and distorted, I would say, by people who would like to, further their own agendas, I would say, and they are distorting the meaning of liberalism, just trying to turn it, I would say, into some cultish way of life where
Mm.
there should be no opposition to your own view, and your view is the absolute view, and there is no criticism, and it's not open to scrutiny. You have your own way. And this is how, I would like to pose a question, like, if we let people distort or co-opt the meanings of liberalism, then what we have, in its place, how are we going to replace liberalism with what ideology? What do we have?
Yeah.
We have essentially nothing if we try to even replace this one ideology that has been so progressive, that has been so remarkable in human development, in all the progress that has been made over the years. We essentially have nothing to replace it with. So can we reclaim liberalism?
I think we have to. I
Yeah.
think we have to. I don't think it's a maybe or wishful thinking. I think it's a moral position as much as an ethical position. We ought to reclaim it. It's something that is advantageous. I mean, when you talk about just freedom of expression, freedom of speech, as I've talked with a mutual friend and colleague of ours, Kajija, Daniel Sharp, I've said to it, I think the greatest beneficiaries are minorities with the minorities. It allows individuality to flourish within minority groups, where otherwise that identity is pushed into either you're in one particular bracket, and if you're not fit that bracket in a minority group, then otherwise you don't exist. You fall into the margins.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny you say that because so many people in recent years, months especially, have told me, well, I guess I'm a conservative now. And it's like, no, you're not. You believe in all the liberal values. You're super, traditionally left-leaning, but we don't have a political home. We don't have something, we don't identify with all these people who now identify as liberal. And so we have to claim it. Just like, as a Jewish woman, they've completely destroyed and distorted the meaning of Zionism, and we can't let people change the meaning of words. That's really the beginning of the end.
For
Right.
me, it's also like if you are abandoning the very principle of liberalism and replacing it or just turning it into a cultish way of thinking, then of course you are not a liberal anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So terms like far left or, I mean, like woke to describe liberals, I think these are all distortions. They are taking us nowhere, and we will end up, having just nothing to describe our positions on certain issues, which are very, very crucial for our, I would say, for us as a society. And we cannot just be like, Audre said that we are like politically homeless. So this is how our position, would be in the world. And of course, then we wouldn't be able to address the issues which are very, very important for us, like freedom of speech. I mean, this is a hard-earned right, and it's precarious right. We have to defend it all the time. We cannot just take it for granted. We cannot just say that we have earned it and now that's the end. But then again, people who are trying to push this kind of ideology that they call it woke ideology, and trying to distort the meaning of then liberalism. I think they are the ones who are trying to curtail the freedoms we enjoy in the free Western societies in the name of liberalism, and that is ironic, really.
Right. And
Well said.
where do you think that we went wrong? Where do you think was there some sort of defining um time or series of events where this happened, where the meaning of the word completely changed and it became the opposite of what it was, and free speech became seen as something terrible, and if you didn't comply with this quote unquote woke ideology, were a terrible, terrible bigot? And where did that